reading a poem by the infamous Edgar Allan Poe. And this poem is called Spirits of the Dead.
A round of applause.
Спасибо большое. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are again. In death around thee and their will shall then overshadow thee. Be still, for the night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall look not down from the high thrones in the heaven, with light like hope to mortals given. But their red orbs without beam to thy weariness shall seem as a burning and a fever which could cling to thee forever. Now our thoughts thou shalt not banish, now our visions near to vanish. From thy spirit shall they pass, no more like dewdrop from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, shadowy, yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token. How it hangs upon the trees, a mystery of mysteries. And that's that.
Hi.
That was really good.
Cheers. All the credit goes to Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, I guess most of you know who Edgar Allan Poe was. Infamous sort of Gothic writer of tales from America. Famous, of course, for the poem "The Raven," which is actually in The Simpsons. I don't know if anyone knows that, but there's a Simpsons. Yeah. Very well known American poet and writer. Yeah. So
it's
it was
famous in Russia too.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. But very appropriate for tonight, I think. Is the sound levels all right, by the way?
I'm really lost after two lines.
Yeah.
I don't
Me too.
understand anything. It's just
Yeah.
I don't follow. It's like the
don't
rhythm
follow.
is fine. Okay.
yeah, you're
I
doing
can hear
great,
some
Chris.
rhyme going on. There's some rhyme there. I'm sure of that.
I think I thought I'm
There is
the author, so
atmosphere.
I just stayed silent and do that. I pretend to understand everything. Like, okay, good. But
It
I
maintains
expected something
atmosphere.
about death, dead people, death, horror.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody was there, definitely. Yeah, I heard that too.
So, yeah,
Also,
Edgar Allan
somebody was
Poe.
hanging from the trees or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, those thy and thee words like that, like they are sometimes confusing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's like old English, isn't it? Really, it's very
Yeah.
old-fashioned. And
Well, actually, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. It's yeah. I mean, that's sort of his style, isn't it? To write in that very sort of exaggerated, ye old English style, thee and
Yeah.
thine.
But I think it's cool. I mean, thy, thou, just out of fun. Like when I pray, I kind of
Yeah.
learn. I try to, learn how to pray in English. So I changed because it's like, as people told me, like too informal. So I learned like how to use properly. Like thou, thy, thine, and thee.
Yeah.
So you say thy, it's like if you say like thy, the next thing is supposed to be consonant. Like you say, for instance, it's thy book, like your book. Then it's like also your, but it's all, if it's like before the vowel, like thine eyes are beautiful, like your eyes are beautiful.
Mhm.
And these like give it to thee, like kind of like this.
Too complicated.
Yeah.
Not so complicated as Isak eldade und his ejan thustrodon and and I don't remember what comes next, but it's the beginning of that old English some poem that we learned at university.
Something
From the
like
first
Oh,
line, I thought it's
finally you
well.
used it in a real
Yeah,
situation.
I can only remember the first line, but yeah, like
Yeah.
Maybe you can use
Yeah.
it in Hogwarts to do something like.
most, to be honest, like most English people don't know half of the. Okay. Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes till Becca joins. Should have schedule. Okay, so this is my story I wrote for
It
this.
proves.
This is a story I wrote for this event. It's called Curse of the Cosmonaut. So I chose a slightly Russian theme in honor of the Russian people. So here we go. It was the year 2190, and in the deep, endless expanse of the cosmos, something stirred within the shattered husk of the hull of what was once the International Space Station, orbiting needlessly and without purpose above the Earth. The humans below and above having long ago driven each other to mutually assured destruction, annihilating each other in nuclear flame till only a battered, empty husk remained, charred and barren of life. Yet still something stirred above, echoing through the corridors of this monument to man, an old, weary, beady eye blinking slowly and with great intensity, surveying the broken hull of the space station. Of what could possibly have survived in such a hostile environment, blinking in the long dead remains of the ISS, we shall soon discover as we unveil a fate more horrible than death itself, the curse of the cosmonaut. Ivan had always had a fascination with space that has existed as long as he could remember. Perhaps it was a science class that drew him to it. Perhaps an old showreel of Yuri Gagarin he had seen, or maybe even something as simple as looking out his window on a cold winter's night and stargazing. But whatever it was, he knew he had always been drawn to them, entranced by their cosmic siren song. His family thought him a dreamer, of course, and his older brother Sasha would bully him constantly, call him a feckless wanderer, a daydreamer, and worst of all, perhaps, a nerd. One of whom was sure to never attract a woman to his side. But to Ivan, he was above their insults, and teasing, knowing somehow that his destiny would somehow still be found, not below on the cold, shivering streets of Moscow, but above perhaps, in some place in the stars, some unknown vista he could scarcely imagine. He pursued his dream, studying as hard as he could whenever he could, shirking the hedonism of other teenagers his age, to study long and hard, driven by an insatiable desire to ascend the cosmic ladder. Dreaming inevitably of his ultimate goal, to become a cosmonaut and to join his comrades in space in an international mission of exploration and discovery. By the age of 20, he was well on his way, training hard physically and mentally. His brother didn't tease him anymore. He couldn't, given that Ivan could quite easily beat him to a pulp. And also the fact that women actually did pay attention to him now, attracted by his dreamy nature, inquisitive eyes that widened with wonder whenever he would wax lyrical about space, physics, and his strong physical features. He was now at the crux of the first step of his journey, having just graduated from university with top marks in astroengineering and hovering over an application to Roscosmos to train in their cosmonaut training program. Do it! Press it! I won't do the accents actually, teased Marcia, his girlfriend of some 2 years sitting by his side. Da, I will, he responded with a cheeky grin on his face, before pressing the submit button and placing his foot on the first rung of that cosmic ladder he dreamed of so often. He was accepted into the training program on account of his excellent academic ability and passed all the physical checks with ease. Enrolled in the training program during which he met the brilliant and fabled cosmonaut, Sergei Yesenin, a legend in the space community, having been one of the infamous crew on the first mission to Mars in the year 2040. Sergei was renowned for having an intense look, and it was said that his eyes could burn into your soul. as if the acrid surface of Mars was burrowing into the depths of your being. Some even claimed that on Mars he had sold his soul to the devil. But what Ivan knew that such urban legends were nonsense. Ivan, said Sergei with some annoyance, you are a good student, but you have to stop idealizing space. It was Ivan's first assessment of the great man, and he felt humbled by his presence. Sergei looked at him with those infamous eyes, a flame flickering somewhere in the distance. I was just like you as a younger man, full of dreams and wonder. But I tell you, my adventurous friend, wander long enough out there in the darkness of the infinite, and you should come to the conclusion that all is dust, including us. Ivan was utterly perplexed by this statement, and confused and somewhat hurt. But he could recognize the element of truth to it. One had to keep one's foot on the rung of the ladder to avoid the long floating into nothingness. The years of training passed, and Ivan grew close to Sergei, the two bonding over in-depth discussions of astronomy, engineering, art, poetry, and literature. And Ivan came to appreciate the steely, almost mercurial presence of the man. One night he was invited to Sergei's quarters. He assumed to have their weekly talk and maybe a little vodka afterwards, a ritual that had now been ingrained into the schedule. They talked for 2 hours before Sergei said, "Is it time?" And Ivan nodded with enthusiasm as Sergei poured 2 shots of vodka, smiling in an almost sinister manner and chuckling to himself. An hour maybe had passed, and several vodka shots later, Sergei suddenly had a weary, melancholic look upon his face, almost seeming to become as dry and barren as that surface of Mars he had placed his foot upon all those years ago. Sergei looked at Ivan and seemed almost to wince, his face contorting. Ivan, you know I have always had the greatest respect for your drive, your unending desire to see eternity. Da, replied Ivan, curious as to where this was going. Well, my boy, what if I were to tell you there was a way I could make it real? You mean metaphorically, I assume, chuckled Ivan. After all, they were Russian, and they had been drinking vodka, and metaphor was the other art they were, as a people, were well known to be versed in. Sergei's eyes blazed with an intensity suddenly like supernova as he stared directly at Ivan and bluntly uttered a single word. Niet. Ivan chuckled uneasily this time as the stare did not break from his eyes, gazing into unknown depths. Come on, Sergei. I think we have taken too much. Let's retire for the night. It happened so fast that Ivan barely had time to comprehend what was going on. Sergei lunged at him with incredible speed, his maroon dark red eyes pumping with a terrifying intensity as he leapt onto Ivan, fangs unsheathed and bit long and hard into his neck, engorging himself on his plasma to feed his insatiable hunger, the burning within. Ivan passed out and then awoke in a haze of confusion to see Sergei sat beside him, his eyes glowing like the barren atmosphere of Mars itself. Drink, he whispered, putting his arm out, cut and bleeding in front of Ivan. And my friend, we will see eternity. Of this I can promise you. Or do not, and I hear whimpering like a child. The choice is yours, but know that I at least gave you a choice. Ivan was confused, his strength wavering. He had to see the stars. He had to get to the top of the ladder, reach that palace above. He lamented that perhaps dear old Sergei had indeed given his soul to the devil, but the choice he gave him was no choice at all. It was a riddle he could not resist, and with unsettling ease he bit into Sergei's exposed arm, feeding warm life a last return to his battered, weakened frame, and he submitted to his fate, to become Nosferatu, one of the damned, condemned to wander the world and beyond for eternity. With a nod, he stood up, looking to Sergei, uttered just these words, I will never forgive you, and yet I can never find the words to thank you enough. It is the way for us all at first, that will guide you on your journey among this immortal coil. He smiled wryly. Many years passed, many trials, many errors, many girlfriends. Sometimes would have to be consumed, as Marcia was some years ago now. Each day, Ivan getting closer and closer to his goal, killing other students if they were proving a little too good for his liking. His competitive spirit now matched with his ambition and bloodlust proved a deadly meeting. Until he got his wish and was sent hurtling to the ISS as a cosmonaut. And that, as they say, is that. Sometimes wishes can come true, but not always as you might imagine. Now Ivan, now probably 200 years old, sighed in his metallic cage, surrounded by the remains of his crew. Mere dust now in a dark cage that was his life, a miserable, rotten creature entombed for eternity in his palace in the sky. All he could do was sigh. He had almost forgotten how to communicate, driven half mad by his unsated bloodlust. A skeletal form he possessed now, bone-thin and delicate-looking, but unquestionably ghoulish. Dreams do come true, but nightmares do too. The cursed cosmonaut knew it better than all, and would, for the eternity of his bitter, undead sentence. So that's that. That's the story I wrote quite quickly for this this thing. I sort of tried to make it a bit comedic in places, and yeah. What does anyone think of that? I guess is Dan here with us, by the way? Let me just check.